Welcome to my channel again. Today, we will cover the gross anatomy of the muscle, the name, the location, and the function.
Now that we understand how muscle fibers work, let's look at the muscles themselves. To understand how a muscle moves the body, we have to look at its anchors. The origin is the end of the muscle attached to a fixed, stabilized bone. The insertion is the end attached to the bone that actually moves. When a muscle contracts, the insertion is pulled toward the origin, creating movement at a joint. Let's look at a classic example, the biceps brachii. Origin. It originates at 2 points on the scapula. Insertion. It inserts onto the radial tuberosity of the forearm. Function. Because of these attachments, its primary function is flexion of the elbow and supination of the forearm. When the muscle shortens, it pulls the radius toward the shoulder.
Ever wonder why muscles have such complex names? They aren't just random Latin. They are actually descriptive cheat codes. Let's break down how muscles get their names. Some are named for the body region they occupy, like the frontalis over your frontal bone. Others are named for their attachments. Take the sternocleidomastoid. Its name tells you it connects the sternum and clavicle to the mastoid process. We also name them by the action they perform. The flexor carpi ulnoris flexes the wrist, while the extensor carpi radialis extends it. We even look at the direction of the fibers. Rectus means straight, transversus means across, and oblique means at an angle. Size matters in anatomy. Maximus means large, minimus means small, and vastus means it covers a huge area. If a muscle is long, we call it longus. If it's short, it's brevis. When muscles work in pairs, the larger one is the major and the smaller is the minor. Many muscles are named for their shape. Deltoid, triangular, like the Greek letter delta. Orbicularis, circular, like an orbit. Serratus, sawtoothed. Trapezius, trapezoid-shaped. We also count their heads or origins. Biceps has 2 and triceps has 3. Finally, we look at the specialized connective tissues. Fascia, the sheet-like wrapping. Aponeurosis, a broad, flat tendon. Tract or band, a long reinforced strip like the IT band. Sheath, a tube-like covering that protects tendons.
Now, let's move to the practical application. For each muscle in these 9 primary categories, we will identify its location on the body, state its specific name, and detail its origin, its insertion, and its primary function. This systematic approach will help you understand not just where a muscle is, but exactly how its physical attachments dictate its movement. We will identify muscles of the head and neck, muscles of mastication, extrinsic eye muscles, muscles of the trunk and shoulder, front, muscles of respiration, muscles of the trunk and shoulder, back, muscles of the abdominal wall, muscles of the upper limb, and the muscles of the lower limb and pelvis.
Let's begin by identifying the muscles of the upper face. First, the occipitalis, which originates on the occipital bone and inserts into the galea aponeurotica to pull the scalp posteriorly. Its counterpart, the frontalis, originates at that same galea and inserts into the skin of the eyebrows to raise them. Near the eyes, we find the orbicularis oculi, originating on the frontal and maxillary bones to close the eyelids. Deep to it is the corrugator supercilii, which originates on the frontal bone and draws the eyebrows inferiorly and medially. Muscles of expression, the mouth. Moving to the midface and mouth, the levator labii superioris originates on the zygomatic and maxilla bones to raise the upper lip. Conversely, the depressor labii inferioris and the depressor anguli oris originate on the mandible to pull the lip and corners of the mouth down. On the chin, the mentalis protrudes the lower lip. For smiling, the zygomaticus major and minor pull the mouth corners up, while the risorius pulls them laterally. The orbicularis oris circles the lips to compress them, and the buccinator, originating on the maxilla and mandible, allows us to compress our cheeks for whistling. The neck and throat. Finally, we move to the neck. The thin platysma originates from the chest fascia and pulls the jaw and lips down. The prominent sternocleidomastoid originates on the manubrium and clavicle, inserting into the temporal and occipital bones to flex the neck forward. Deeply, the scalenes elevate the first two ribs for breathing. In the throat, the digastric and mylohyoid originate on the mandible to elevate the hyoid bone, while the sternohyoid acts to depress it. The muscles of mastication, chewing. Beyond facial expression, we have the powerful muscles of mastication. The masseter is one of the strongest muscles in the body relative to its size, originating on the zygomatic and maxillary bones and inserting into the mandible. It is your primary jaw closer. Working with it is the temporalis, which fills the temporal fossa and also inserts into the mandible to ensure a powerful bite.
We now move to the extrinsic eye muscles, a highly specialized group of 6 muscles that coordinate every movement of the globe. First, we identify the 4 rectus muscles, which move the eye in straight lines. The superior and inferior rectus are responsible for elevating and depressing the eye, respectively, while the lateral and medial rectus control abduction and adduction, moving the eye side to side. Finally, we look at the oblique muscles, which handle rotational movement. The inferior oblique originates from the floor of the orbit. Its action elevates the eye and turns it laterally. Conversely, the superior oblique passes through a pulley-like loop called the trochlea to depress the eye and turn it laterally. Together, these 6 muscles ensure our vision remains stable and aligned.
Moving to our attention to the front of the body. The serratus anterior originates on the ribs and inserts into the anterior surface of the scapula. Its job is to fixate and protract the shoulder blade. Deep to the chest is the pectoralis minor, which helps move the scapula forward or acts as an accessory muscle for deep breathing. On the surface, the pectoralis major is the agonist for shoulder flexion, while the deltoid, capping the shoulder, is the prime mover for abduction, lifting the arm away from the body.
The muscles of respiration, breathing. Next, let's look at the muscles that keep us alive, the muscles of respiration. The external intercostals originate on the rib above and insert on the rib below. When they contract, they elevate the rib cage to allow for inhalation. Conversely, the internal intercostals do the opposite. They originate on the rib below and pull the rib above downward to depress the cage during forced exhalation. The diaphragm, the breath master. Finally, the most critical muscle for breathing is the diaphragm. This dome-shaped muscle has extensive origins along the ribs, sternum, and vertebrae, all converging into a unique central tendon. When it contracts, it flattens out, expanding the thoracic cavity as the prime mover of inspiration.
Turning to the posterior view, we identify the muscles that stabilize the shoulder and power the back. We begin with the rotator cuff family, essential for shoulder integrity. The supraspinatus originates on the scapula and acts as a synergist for arm abduction. The infraspinatus and teres minor both work to hold the humeral head securely in the glenoid cavity while providing lateral rotation. Below them, the teres major adducts and medially rotates the humerus. Moving to the midline, the massive diamond-shaped trapezius originates from the occipital bone and vertebrae to extend the head and elevate the scapula. Deep to it, the rhomboids, major and minor, and the levator scapulae work to adduct, stabilize, and elevate the scapula. Finally, the latissimus dorsi, originating from the vertebrae, ribs, and ilium, serves as the powerhouse agonist for shoulder extension, pulling the arm back and down.
We now identify the 4 layers of the abdominal wall, which provide core stability and protect our internal organs. Starting superficially at the midline, the rectus abdominis originates on the pubis and inserts into the xiphoid process and ribs. This is the primary flexor of the vertebral column and increases intra-abdominal pressure. Moving laterally, we find the external oblique, originating from the ribs and inserting into the linea alba and pelvis to assist in trunk rotation. Deep to that is its mirror image, the internal oblique, which originates from the lumbar fascia and ilium to provide further rotational support. Finally, the deepest layer is the transversus abdominis. It wraps around the torso like a natural corset, originating from the ribs and ilium to compress the abdominal contents and provide essential spinal support.
Moving to the upper limb, we identify the muscles that drive the power of the arm and the precision of the wrist. On the anterior arm, the biceps brachii serves as the agonist for elbow flexion, while the deeper brachialis and the brachioradialis act as essential flexors and synergists. These are balanced on the posterior side by the triceps brachii, the primary agonist for elbow extension. As we reach the forearm, we identify the movers of the wrist. The flexor carpi ulnaris, flexor carpi radialis, and palmaris longus work together to flex the wrist and palm. On the opposite side, the extensor carpi radialis and ulnaris provide the necessary extension. Finally, we identify the pronator teres, which originates on the humerus and inserts into the radius to rotate the forearm into a palm-down position.
Finally, we identify the powerhouse of human movement, the lower limb and pelvis. Starting with the gluteal region, the gluteus maximus provides the power for climbing, while the medius and minimus abduct the thigh and steady the pelvis. Nearby, the tensor fascia latae tenses the lateral thigh fascia. Deep in the hip, the iliopsoas acts as the most powerful hip flexor, supported by the sartorius, which allows us to cross our legs. On the medial side, the adductor group and the gracilis pull the leg toward the midline. For knee mechanics, the quadriceps, including the rectus femoris and the vastus group, act as prime extensors. These are opposed by the hamstrings, the biceps femoris, semimembranosus, and semitendinosus, which extend the thigh and flex the knee. Moving to the lower leg, the gastrocnemius and soleus provide plantar flexion for walking, while the popliteus unlocks the knee joint. We finish with the foot. The tibialis anterior handles dorsiflexion, the tibialis posterior manages inversion, and the extensor digitorum longus extends the toes.
Thank you for watching. I hope you learned something new today. Please don't forget to like and subscribe to stay informed for our next lesson.